For decades, you've known the name Bill Gates. It's been practically synonymous with genius, philanthropy, progress. He was presented to us as this ideal man spending millions to change the world. But what if that whole image was just a story? A really, really well-written story sold to us for years. Well, today, that story is collapsing, and the secrets that were hidden for so long are finally starting to see the light of day.
Okay, so let's just dive right into it. On one side, you've got the Bill Gates we were all told to admire, right? The tech visionary, the savior of humanity. But on the other side, there's this flood of shocking reports and allegations. We're talking deception, monopoly, and a really disturbing connection to Jeffrey Epstein. This is the central conflict, and in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how we got from that first column to the second.
To really understand how this image was held up for so long, you have to go back to the source of his incredible power. And believe me, it wasn't just about having good ideas, it was about having control. This slide really lays out the secret to his initial power. It wasn't just innovation, it was a near total monopoly. By the late 1980s, Microsoft had its hands on 80% of the software market. Just a few years later, that number jumped to a staggering 91%. That means one man effectively controlled the digital infrastructure for pretty much everything, from our homes to our governments.
So when you have that kind of absolute market control, it translates directly into unimaginable wealth. And with that kind of money comes powerful connections. We're talking about the kind of influential people who operate behind the scenes. This economic dominance basically created a political shield, a network that would make him seem untouchable.
But, with that kind of power comes a lot of scrutiny. By the mid-90s, Gates's public image was taking a hit from antitrust lawsuits and accusations of being this ruthless monopolist. So he needed a new plan, a whole new story. And that brings us to what many sources are now calling his masterstroke, the philanthropic shield.
He pioneered this concept that's now known as philanthropic capitalism. Now on the surface, it sounds amazing, right? Using business smarts to do good things. But critics argue it's actually a pretty calculated strategy, using charity not just for altruism, but as a tool to expand power, gain influence, and, protect business interests.
So, how did this actually work in practice? Let's look at a key example. Gates invested over $300 million to improve farming in Africa, a really noble cause that got him some incredible PR. But according to reports, once the real goals were achieved, the positive press, the political influence, the economic immunity, the project itself was neglected and ended up failing to meet its main goals. In fact, some reports even claim that poverty in those regions actually went up.
And this really shows you the larger strategy that was going on. By funding elite universities, he was building relationships with future politicians. By weaving his foundations into government functions like health and education, he made himself essential. So taking legal action against Bill Gates, that became a political risk to the very establishment he was propping up. He had built this perfect shield of influence.
But behind that carefully crafted image of the dedicated family man and global philanthropist, a whole different reality was taking shape. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn. We have to talk about his connection to the convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein.
This is the question at the very heart of his public downfall. For years, this connection was totally downplayed. But now, new information from leaked documents is painting a much more disturbing picture.
And just look at this. This is a direct quote from a leaked email Gates sent after staying late at Epstein's infamous New York townhouse. He wrote that Epstein's life was interesting and that he had a unique experience. Now remember, this was in 2012. That's years after Epstein had already been convicted for soliciting a minor.
So why was Gates so protected when other people weren't? Well, this slide kind of breaks down their public armor. Epstein had this murky past, and his donations were small and hidden. Gates, on the other hand, had the reputation of a genius inventor and this massive, highly publicized philanthropic empire. It was a shield Epstein just didn't have.
The timeline itself is just damning. Epstein's conviction was in 2008. Gates didn't even meet him for the first time until 2011, 3 years later. He knew exactly who he was dealing with. And despite warnings from his own team and his wife, the relationship kept going for years. A relationship he would later call the biggest mistake of his life.
So you've got this story of immense power, a perfectly constructed public image, and a whole series of shocking revelations. But the final piece of this puzzle is maybe the most confusing part of all, the almost complete lack of any real consequences.
Far from suffering, his power and wealth have only grown. Get this. During the global pandemic lockdown, a time of incredible hardship for billions of people, Bill Gates' personal fortune reportedly went up by more than $36 billion. His influence didn't just survive the scandals, it actually thrived on them.
And for all of this, for the alleged affairs, the questionable charity practices, the deeply disturbing ties to Jeffrey Epstein, what was the actual punishment? He resigned from the board of Microsoft. That's it. There has been no significant legal fallout, no public reckoning beyond the headlines. Which leaves us right here with this one final critical question. Was the man we all watched for decades a genuine savior of humanity? Or is that just the public face of a master player in the high-stakes game of power, money, and politics? Based on all these revelations, the answer seems to be far more complex and a whole lot darker than we were ever led to believe.